All right. All right. Hello, Dr. Maya Ziegler of Monarch Family Chiropractic. And I love the topic for tonight because we are sitting more now than we ever have in our existence. And it's nice to understand how that's impacting our health and our structure. I'm going to get into a few numbers tonight. And I think if there was any workshop to go back to, it would be this workshop to really help hold you accountable to doing what's most right for your body in a day-to-day time frame where you find yourself in front of a piece of technology, whether it's a computer or a TV or your phone, iPad, whatever it may be. Because when we get into these numbers, you'll see why you'd want to hold yourself accountable. They say sitting is the new smoking. We all know smoking is pretty toxic. We can't say that smoking causes cancer because there isn't a research project that they can actually have people smoke and study long-term and understand the detrimental effects that it has on a body. They can't do that in an ethical way. So we can't say smoking causes cancer, but we have a pretty good idea that when you're consuming or inhaling the components of a cigarette, it's going to cause some stress. So sitting is the new smoking. So let's dive into why. And as always, when we look at lifestyle as it relates to your longevity, right? We're all on a trajectory of in our health, how our body ages over time. So when we look at the trajectory we are on, is our choices that we're making today, are they helping us or are they harming us? And you can look at it in any category. You can look at it in terms of how we're eating or how we're carrying our body and moving our body in a day-to-day way. So your lifestyle, your workstation setup, how you move your body or lack thereof, is that helping or harming you? And recognizing that, what we do on a day-to-day basis, I tell this to people all the time. If you're sitting for 6, 8, 10 hours a day, you are training your body in a very intense way at a frequency daily, intensely training your body to be in that position. And so you need to take the same measure to train your body in an opposite way to counteract those measures. So if you are sitting for any extended periods of time, know that it is harming you. And how can you counteract
last week through the 10th, 5161.
So how many hours a day are you sitting? That is, if you have a notepad or if you have your phone on you, I want you to think about, how many hours you're sitting a day. Think about it work-wise, think about it home-wise, think about it commute. I want you to add up those hours. We all want to know you don't have to share it with anybody, but you want to know your hours of how many days you're sitting, because you want to see how it relates to the average American. And if we look at the stats, and what research shows us is that we are spending 21 hours a day in a sedentary type lifestyle. Now, sedentary is not sitting. Sedentary is bigger than that. Understand that sedentary includes sleeping, but it's really inactive hours. And so the average American is sedentary for 21 hours. What does that include? 8 hours of sleep. Then we have sitting for work, 7.5 hours, watching TV, leisure time, home computer time, eating time. And the active hours, where we are either active or standing, are 3 hours in a 24-hour period. So how does that impact us? That's what we're here. How does that impact us? So if you take away the sitting, or excuse me, the sleeping component of your 24 hours, and you add in those however many hours of sitting a day, you can see if the average is 7.5, are you falling above or below that? So really the time is now. If you're ever looking at wanting to change or improve your lifestyle, the time is now. There is no other time. We can't change what's happened in the past. And certainly, when New Year's resolutions come around, they say, don't you wish last year you would have kept up with it? Right? It's always the time is now to make the change, to improve our choices. We then improve our lifestyle. So there is a direct correlation with media use and sitting. Okay, we tend to do a lot of sitting when we consume media. And so this is between 2010 and 2015, really looking at how many hours a day are we spending in front of media and likely sitting. So if we look at this, if 500 minutes in a day equals an 8-hour day, 300 minutes is a 5-hour day. Let's just take a look. TV, how much time are we spending on TV, internet, outdoors, and outdoors, just so you understand this is fascinating. Outdoors is considered billboard. When we see any type of billboard, outdoor signage, that sort of thing, that's media consumption. And you can see TV has pretty well stayed the same the entire time in terms of usage. If we look at this blue category, this is radio. This turquoise category is internet. You can see our internet usage has certainly increased. We're not spending a lot of time at the cinema, not spending a ton of time magazines or newspapers. So really the bulk of what we're spending our time with media wise is TV, internet, and then we have our outdoor consumption, which is, probably nothing that we're doing intentionally, right? So 500 hours a day, this is how those are media is consumed, and that's 8 hours of your workday, 8 hours of your regular day, however you want to look at it. So where are we connecting? If we look at this. So Americans use electronic media 11 plus hours a day. So let's just think about this. The first study we showed was we're 21 hours a day of our 24-hour period sedentary. That includes our sleep. If we add up all the sitting, it makes up a big bulk of that. And we know that majority of our sitting is in front of consuming media. So let's look at our electronic media usage a day. The average is 11 plus hours a day. And this is adults 18 plus years old. And this was from 2014. And so you can see the blue here is almost 5 hours in front of a TV, and that's live TV. Live TV is different from Netflix, Hulu, anything you're watching recorded. Smartphones are over here at an hour and almost an hour and a half. Internet PC, an hour. And then the time shifted TV, which I'm sure has changed, was 33 minutes. I know that it'd be interesting to see, 8 years later, how our media usage has changed with, time shifted TV, with access to a smartphone, all of those things. But again, think about how many days you are awake, and 11 of those waking hours are spent consuming media, which is a pretty significant time frame. And how much of that media consumption are you sitting, which feeds into a sedentary lifestyle, which feeds into a lot of stress to our bodies. So what happens if we are sitting? Here's another study that shows average time people are sitting is 9.6 hours. So you can kind of gauge that, we're almost at double digits in terms of average time we're sitting. So this is what the research says. If you're sitting for 9.6 hours a day, we're seeing neck pain occur. We see back pain occur. Back pain is one of the most common reasons for lost productivity. It's one of the most common reasons people seek healthcare. Sedentary people are 200% more likely to have heart problems. What's the leading cause of death in the US? It's heart disease. What's the first symptom we get from heart disease? It is a heart attack. And do most people survive that heart attack? I guess I don't know the number, but if we are a symptom-based society and we're really looking at how we feel as a measure of health, and heart disease is the leading cause of death, and the first symptom we get is a heart attack, that's a problem. And we know that if we're sedentary, we're 200% more likely to have heart problems. Get this, an extra 2 hours of sitting daily is linked to an 8% increased risk of colon cancer. So if I'm sitting for 2 extra hours, I could increase my risk of cancer. We see joint pain affects 30% of US adults. And we also see 25% of women, 15% of men have visible varicose veins when they're spending a lot more time sitting. So wouldn't you agree that if we could get up and move and stand more, it would greatly impact the health of our bodies? Of course. Let's get into more. So quality versus quantity. We're seeing that less time sitting is linked to better sleep. And let's just talk about sleep for a second, because sleep is vital for the health of our brains, vital for the health of our immune systems, vital for healthy hormonal responses. It's when our brain recovers from a full day of activity. So sleeping is really important. And I like you to think about, when I think about sleep, I think about Disneyland, you know? Disneyland is on it, right? During the day hours. Who knows how many people, tens of thousands of people are going through Disneyland on a daily basis. They need to be operating at 100% all the time. Everybody needs to be on. Everybody in their place, their roles, they are skilled and they are running a well-oiled machine. Well, when Disneyland or Disney World closes, it's not like nothing happens. That is when the night shift comes in and they take care of everything, clean up everything, organize everything to prep for a full day the next day. Think about that is, you know, your brain is far, far cooler than Disneyland, by the way. But that is what's happening with your brain at night, is your brain actually shrinks to make room for what's called your lymphatic system to do its job, to get rid of any excess waste, to clean up things so that your brain can be on point and ready to go when you wake up the next morning. So we see when you are sitting for longer periods of time, you have worse sleep. And so if we look at, you know, how many people are getting very good sleep as it relates to how much time they're sitting. And we see that there is certainly a correlation with very good sleep and length of time we are in a chair. So just keep that in mind. Some people say, man, I'm not getting great sleep. And there could be many, many reasons, but if you are sitting for extended periods of time, that could be contributing to it. This came out of the Mayo Clinic at Arizona State University. Sitting is more dangerous than smoking, killing more people than HIV, and is more treacherous than parachuting. We are sitting ourselves to death. And if you are at home here, which we all are, except for us at the office, and you can, I want you to repeat this with me. We are sitting ourselves to death.
We are sitting ourselves to death.
Yes, Nancy, say it again. We are sitting ourselves to death.
We are sitting ourselves to death.
Thank you, Nancy. I hope you, Esteban and Dr. Z, you're saying that too, because literally
we are sitting ourselves to death, doctor.
Yes, Esteban. Thank you. Because we are sitting ourselves to death. The longer we're sitting, the more likely, like we are sprinting towards death. And this is where I'm going to share this with you, because this blew my mind. There's something called the sitting disease, by the way, a sitting disease. This was back in 2008. That found, you know, if you were sitting, you were more likely to die. And this is what I wanted to share. This is actually 2010. So in 2010, the American Cancer Society published in the American Journal of Epidemiology, followed 123,000 individuals. So a pretty significant study when you're following that many people. And there were just under 70,000 women, just under 53,500 men between the time frame of 1993 and 2006. The alarming results: women who were inactive and sat over 6 hours a day were 94% more likely to die during that time frame, compared to women who were physically active and sat less than 3 hours a day. Let's talk about that number, 94%. That's almost 100%. So if you sat 6 hours or more and led a sedentary lifestyle where you were not getting a ton of movement, you were 100% likely to die in a 13-year time frame. Men, you got it a little better. Men who were inactive and sat over 6 hours a day were 48% more likely to die than their standing counterparts. Just sit with that for a second. So when we say we are sitting ourselves to death, we are sitting ourselves to death. So when I go back to knowing that number of how much you're sitting, if you're sitting more than 6 hours a day, you are moving faster towards, more disease, less health, less vitality, less ability to do the things you love to do now and in the future, period. I mean, this is an alarming study. So just remember that. That's why we call it a sitting disease, because it's long periods of physical inactivity that has negative consequences. Here we go. People who sit 6 hours a day or more, they die earlier than those who sit 3 hours or less. They are more overweight. They are 47% more likely to be depressed. They have higher risk of lung and endometrial cancer. And even for physically active people, the risk of developing these cancers worsened with every 2-hour increase of sitting time. My challenge to you at the end of this workshop is to first understand what is your number, and just don't count working time. What is your number, and how can you start implementing steps to get it down? And the goal is going to be 6 hours or less for everybody. You can get there. You can do it. It just takes work and intention. Because I don't know about you, but being overweight and obese is a problem. And mental health is one of the biggest problems that we've experienced. And going through these last 2 years has certainly not helped. And so if you can just stand more, that can change components of how you perceive your world, how you process things, how you see yourself. And not only that, you're moving better, you're feeling better, and you're not depressed, which is a big deal, right? Oopsies, I don't know what I just did there. Okay. So our longevity is affected by our lifestyle choices. We know that sitting leads to more cancer, sitting leads to heart disease, sitting leads to obesity. And if you've tuned into any workshops, you know that they did a study back in 2012. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't remember the year. And they found that almost 9 out of 10 people were at risk for chronic disease. 88%, and this is in America, 88% of Americans were at risk for chronic disease, meaning that they were at risk for, 88% of Americans were metabolically unhealthy, meaning because they were metabolically unhealthy, they were at risk for chronic disease. And here we are. Chronic disease is cancer, it's heart disease, it's COPD, it's all of these lifestyle diseases. And if sitting can impact that, then it is vital for you today to make a change. That's why they call it sitting the new smoking. And this will blow your mind. Effects of long-term sitting are not reversible through exercise or other good habits. So I'm trying to remember if I have the stat for what long-term sitting means. So let's just take a time out here. How many of us, went to kindergarten? What about middle school? Okay, junior high, high school, any college or continuing education, further education? What I'm getting at is if we started school at 5 years old and we went through high school and graduated at 18, most of us have been sitting for the bulk of our day because we're sitting in a desk in a classroom with short periods of recess. And so most of us are at risk for this effect of long-term sitting, which we cannot reverse through exercise or other good habits. So if you are sitting for 10 hours a day and you say, well, that's okay, I'm working out 3 hours tonight, and that's what I do every night, which that's not okay, but that's what I do every night, and you think that's going to minimize the impacts of sitting, it's not. And so what you need to do is you need to minimize the risk by, number one, limiting the amount of time you're sitting every day, and then implementing tools that can interrupt you on a frequent basis throughout your day that gets you up. That's going to be the best case scenario here. So I think it's, again, scary that you can't reverse those impacts. So again, the more you move, the less you sit, the healthier you are. The less likely you're at risk for some cancers, the less likely you're at risk for heart disease, the less likely you're at risk for carrying extra weight, the less likely you're at risk for some, mental health stress. That sounds pretty great. So here's the biggest thing. To know is to know, to not know is to guess, and we're done guessing. We know that sitting moves you towards death faster. So it's first having the awareness that sitting is killing us. And the second step after that awareness is making different choices to sit less. And I will go a step further. And I know that all of you are under great chiropractic care, but to have your spine and nervous system checked for the effects of sitting. Because certainly our spine was meant to move and our body was meant to be challenged. And the more we challenge our system and nerve and our brain and our structure, the healthier we are. And how challenging is it to sit in a chair for long periods of time and be inactive and not move? Our brain wants to conserve energy where it can. It wants to do the easy things. It wants to take shortcuts where it can, because it is intelligent and it is always seeking to be more efficient in terms of consuming less energy. So sitting requires very little energy. And the more we sit and the more we stay here and the less movement we get, the unhealthier we are. So we need to challenge our body. And it's not easy to stand for long periods of time. It's stressful to our bodies, especially if we're not used to it. But it is vital for our health and well-being. So the biggest thing is, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen here. The biggest thing is when it comes to sitting is knowing your numbers, period. You need to know how long you're sitting right now and really create a strategy around how can I sit less. And where that happens is getting a standing desk. If you don't have a standing desk, it is time to invest in one. If you work for an employer, I'm happy to provide a letter outlining that you need one, period. And if they're still unwilling to provide you with a standing desk, then get your own. You can get really decent standing desks for, not so much. In fact, I've got an IKEA desk, an IKEA table over there that's a kid's table that cost me $15. I have people who set those on top of their desk and use it as standing desk. So that is a non-negotiable. You need a standing desk, period. Secondly, you need to be getting your spine checked. You need to make sure you have a healthy spine, movement in your spine. And once you have a healthy, movable spine, you need to make sure you're doing spinal hygiene movements on a regular basis. Like I said earlier, what you do daily for long periods of time is intense training. It is intense. And so you can't reverse the long-term impacts of that intense training. So you need to introduce movements throughout your day. And the gold standard is every 15 minutes. If you're sitting or in a posture for longer than 15 minutes, you need to interrupt that posture. And I don't mean go do 3 sets of 10 push-ups and run around, the building. I mean, interrupt the posture, stand, stretch, get back into it, shift your posture, change things. Sitting on a chair, now you're going to sit on a ball, right? You're standing, then you're going to go to a vestibular disc and start doing your wobbles. You're lunging, you're on your knees, right? You're going from sitting to stand, you're constantly moving and challenging your body. So posture interruptions every 15 minutes. And then making sure your workstation is appropriate. And I have a whole nother workshop that we go through to really assess and support an ergonomically friendly workstation to support your body and structure. I'm going to stop there because I gave you a lot of information to really sit with and process with. And the biggest thing is, if there is one workshop that I would tune into on a monthly basis to help hold you accountable to making better choices around your work posture and your daily postures, it is this one, because the stats are scary. I mean, I read it on that sheet of paper. The numbers are alarming. If you have a sedentary lifestyle, which we know, the average American is sedentary for 21 hours out of the day, 3 hours active. Most of those minutes outside of sleeping, most of that time frame is sitting. So my challenge is, how can you shift your trajectory just by changing your daily posture? And I'll end with this. Most people do not have a lack of information. In fact, we have more information available to us than any other time. Like at the, access of our fingertips, whether it's a computer, an iPad, a phone, we have so much information. It's coming out of our ears. And so my challenge to you is, how can we not just be in information, but take action with that information? And there are lots of options out there in terms of health and taking care of our body. And we know that people who get chiropractic care make different choices and are inspired to be more accountable to doing what's most right for their health and well-being. And so I'm asking you to share what you know. We have a patient appreciation week coming up the first week of May. We do this 1 of 3 times in a year. We do it 3 times in a year. This is the first. And we are doing exams and x-rays at our expense. We never do that. Except for these special times. So if you have family or friends, I encourage you, please send them in. We want people to be healthier. We want them to be on a different trajectory. We want them to experience life differently 15, 20, 30 years from now. That's what I'm thinking about with you guys. I'm not thinking about, oh, what's it going to be like for Esteban or, Dr. Z or Nancy tomorrow. I'm thinking about, no, what does their life look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? I'm looking at the long-term game, because I want the best for you, just like I want that for my family. So if you share what you know, we know that people make different decisions and have a different lens when they are under care, or at least when they know that there's another option. So I appreciate you. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm going to stop the recording. And if you guys have questions,